out there to all my listeners, and I'd like to welcome you to Is Your Way in Your Way podcast. And as many of you are aware, and I know I have some new listeners, my name is Cassandra Crawley Mayo, and I'm your host. Also, for those new listeners again, the title of my book is Your Way in Your Way. And I am qualified to write that because I have been in my way. And it had been in my way for doing things that I always wanted to do. I had a fire in my belly about writing a book, and it took me like 12 years. I mean, it's just crazy. So, because I've been there, I know many of you have as well. And I talk about topics related to personal improvement, personal development, self improvement, and it will also enable you to do a lot of self reflection to try to figure out, you know what? If she can do that, so can I. And my prayer has always been that somebody is really touched by a story, an experience someone has, and decides, you know what, I'm a pivot. And if she can do it, I can do it. So today I love the topic that we have today. A pause, Pause, is not a period. I love that. And this young lady by the name of Lorraine Smith, I'm going to introduce you. She is proof that it is never too late to step into your best life. She's actually published her first novel at 65. So that demonstrates that God's plans are not limited by your age, your time, or your setbacks. She is going to show us that the dream that she abandoned or delayed can still flourish. So let me introduce you to the stage, Lorraine Smith. Hi, Lorraine.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me. I'm so
Yeah,
excited.
I am excited too, girl. I'm just loving this title. A
Oh,
pause is not a period.
thank you.
Well, yeah, Lorraine, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to read your bio because a lot of my listeners are like, what qualifies them to talk about this? So I'm just going to read it a little bit so they can get to know you. And then from there, we're going to dive into some questions. Now,
Perfect.
Lorraine is an award winning author in 2025 International Impact Book Awards. Congratulations,
No,
girl.
thank you.
She's a finalist whose debut novel called Still Searching is a powerful coming of age story rooted in resilience, identity, and self worth. A Sumter, South Carolina native and a graduate of Johnson C. Smith University, Lorraine has spent her professional life as a communication specialist while while nurturing her lifelong passion for storytelling. Her path to publication was anything but easy. I know about that. After she received 60 rejections, check this out, 60, not six, 60 rejections in the 1990s, she set her dream aside to raise her son. Decades later, she received her manuscript and assigned a published contract only to be diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer just 2 months later. And you know, guys, I always say the higher the level, the bigger the devil, because I say that, that enemy knew that she was going to have some book that you guys can relate to, and he tried to stop it. So what he did this that he said, okay, I get it. I'm going to have the triple negative breast cancer diagnosis. But through her surgeries, her chemotherapy, radiation, and working two jobs, Lorraine persevered, editing her book in the midst of her fight for her life. Today, she is a cancer free, yay. Still Searching has become a celebrated, that's the name of her book. Still Searching has become a celebrated award winning novel at the age of 65. She resides in Massachusetts, Cambridge, where she enjoys writing, traveling, cooking, and spending time with family and friends. Her life and her book mirror the journey of every woman who has ever questioned where she belongs and fought to reclaim her worth. And Lorraine, I used to question that. Number one, I used to question, why am I here? Things got so crazy in my life. And I'm like, well, what? I mean, where do I belong? I mean, is this all I should do? Work, get up in the morning, go to work, come home, eat, look at a little TV, read a little bit, and go to bed. I'm like, it has to be more than this.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah. So let me ask you. Now, originally, you grew up in Sumter, South Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
and you went to Charles. Well, I'm getting ready to say Charlotte Johnson C. Smith, which is in Charlotte, North
North
Carolina.
Carolina.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to know your backstory before, up until in going to college. Tell us about that.
Okay, well, my dad was military
Uh huh.
and the Air Force, so I did a lot of extensive traveling. But my mother's originally from Sumter, South Carolina,
Okay.
so yeah. So after my dad retired, my mom wanted to go back home and settle in Sumter, South Carolina. So that's where we did what we did, and we all went to elementary school and high school in Sumter, South Carolina. I have one of five
Oh.
siblings. I'm the
Hmm.
second oldest. Uh,
Hmm.
I then after high school, I went to college, Johnson C. Smith University, and majored in communications and that sort of thing. But going back a little bit, when I was in elementary school and high school, I always loved writing.
Okay.
And all of my teachers said, Lorraine, you have that gift. I just did it because I enjoyed it. I
Sure.
didn't think that it was going to be something that I would, a living or that sort of thing.
Right.
And so, I would, just enjoy writing short stories. I was on the
Mhm.
newspaper staff and,
Mm.
things of that nature. And then when I went on to college, I, majored in communications and journalism. And all of my professors, said the same thing. You have that gift, and you might
Yeah.
want to pursue
Yeah.
journalism and that sort of thing. And I'm like, okay, but my passion was broadcasting. I
Oh,
guess I love to
really?
hear myself.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right.
So, I went in that avenue. I worked in television and radio for several years, and so that was my thing. But I wrote as well, but that wasn't my
Uh-huh.
passion. I just loved speaking
Yeah.
with people, interviewing,
Yeah.
and things of that nature.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so that's kind of like basically how the things got
Okay.
rolling. And
Okay.
I would, like I said, write all the time. And
Mhm.
then after college, my grandmother, who my dad is from Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, so my dad's side lives here. And my grandmother, who was here at the time, said, "Why don't you move to Boston? If you don't like it, you could always go back home." And
Mm.
I'm like, at the time I was still in Charlotte.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, sure, I'll relocate. So I went home and I told my mom that I was going to move to Charlotte and I mean, move to
Move
Boston.
boss.
And she
Uh-huh.
said, you'll be home in a week. I'm like, okay, all right.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And it was the weather, because
Yeah.
I'm a Southern girl. So, I'm not used to, nor'easters and, storms and things of that nature and the snow. And so, and if she did not say that, I probably would have moved back home after the first week or two. But I
Oh,
kept hearing
her
you'll
say that.
be, yeah, you'll be home in a week. You'll be home in a week. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no.
Right.
So that was 40 years later. So I'm still here. You
Oh,
know.
wow. Oh, gosh. Okay.
So my first job here was at a local newspaper, and I wrote and that sort of thing. And then I moved on to a television station, a local NBC affiliate here in Boston, and
Mhm.
was there for like 15 years. Loved it.
Mm.
Um,
Oh.
and then I was in a relationship. Now
Uh-huh.
we're getting to the good part.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay. All right.
I was in this relationship with this gentleman,
Mhm.
and it well, we were dating for like 3 years or so, and it just it was going nowhere. But I
Mhm.
found myself pregnant.
Mm.
I used all the precautions, so I just guess it was the divine order.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and the relationship, it fizzled. So, but I found myself, with a beautiful little boy.
Yeah.
And at the time I was working, at the NBC affiliate here. and I'm still writing, enjoying my writing and things of that nature. So um, I just thought I was just writing, and all of a sudden I have a manuscript. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, you know,
Now,
and
let me ask you something, Lorraine. So, as you were growing up, your passion was always broadcasting, journalism. But I mean, it sounded like you really wanted to be on TV,
yeah,
right? Yeah. And
yeah.
okay, so you made it to television,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But in
Hmm.
the midst of all that, you started writing
Yeah.
because
Well,
you
when you're
like,
in television, you still write,
right.
but you
But
know,
okay,
but not to the
okay,
consistency of your writing, manuscripts. But
okay,
I was
okay.
writing
So
was always there.
okay, well, let me ask you, during television, you said that you loved it, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, what
The
made you
storytelling aspect of it. The storytelling aspect
okay?
of it. Hmm.
Okay, so how long were you on TV?
Now I wasn't on it. I was
Oh,
like,
you were just working for the
um,
station.
yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
okay,
Hmm.
all right.
Um, uh,
Oh,
about
okay,
15 years. 15 years.
okay, okay.
Mhm.
Now, what did you specifically do for the station?
PR.
Okay, all right,
Mhm.
uh-huh.
Mhm.
But like you said, you were writing. You weren't on
Mhm.
TV. You were
Mhm.
just writing stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Now,
Yeah.
let's go back.
And out in the
Uh,
community,
yeah.
interacting with people and things of that nature.
Okay. All right. Um, why did you leave? Well, let me go back. Let me go back. Let's talk about the manuscript.
Okay.
Okay. You wrote the manuscript while
Mhm.
you were working,
Mhm.
right?
And I had an
Um,
infant.
uh-huh. And
Mhm.
you had
Mhm.
to, what was that?
I said, and I had an infant, a baby with me,
During that time.
single
Mm-hmm.
mother,
Uh-huh.
this was like back in
Uh-huh.
the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
Single mother writing, and at the television station.
Okay. Okay. And after the manuscript, you submitted it
Mhm. Mhm.
to a lot of places.
Yes,
Like,
I wrote the
like,
manuscript in 60. Well, during that time, there was no internet, so you can just push a button and, your manuscript
right.
is going to, 50 or 60, publishers. So I went to the post office with my 60 manuscripts and with post office and mailed them away. And, one by one, I received letters stating that, thanks, but no thanks, and
Mhm.
I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe God is trying to tell me something. You sent out 60 manuscripts and you were rejected by every last one of them.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, Lorraine, maybe it's just not your time.
Mm.
Let's put a pin in
Okay.
it. Let's put it on pause. You have
Okay. All
you
right.
have a you have a child to raise,
Okay.
and let's do that. Let's
Okay.
concentrate on your career, your son, and let's follow that path. So, and I
Okay.
did. And
Uh-huh.
for years I just forgot about it. I mean, I didn't forget about it, but I just moved on, put it on the back burner.
Sure.
And I'll say maybe 10 plus years later, I'm at work. I had to go, my manuscript was in a particular cabinet at work,
Mm-hmm.
closet,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to go into that closet, and the manuscript was there with an inch of dust on it.
Yeah.
And I opened it to get what I needed, and I just saw the manuscript sitting there, and I looked at it, and I just closed the door. Like,
Uh-huh. Right.
no, I mean, because no one likes rejection, and if you're rejected 60 times, you don't necessarily want to be rejected 61
I am
times.
telling you, girl. I'm telling you. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, no, I'm not going to do it. And that little voice kept saying, Lorraine, open the closet, pull that manuscript out, dust it
Mm-hmm.
off.
Mm-hmm.
I ignored it for months. Months
Mm,
I
okay.
ignored it,
That's mhm.
And lesson I've learned from that, when you have that voice or the intuition tells you to do something, just do it.
Okay. All
But I
right.
ignored it, you know.
Sure. Uh-huh.
So months later, I just, kept ignoring it. And then I said, you know what? What the heck? So I opened the cabinet, pulled it out, dusted off, did some re-editing,
Okay.
and now I can just push a button and send it to various publishers.
Wow.
And I received some bites. I'm like, okay,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Timing.
And
Mm-hmm.
yes, and I'm like, okay, this is great. And I chose one particular publishing company because it was a smaller publishing company, and I didn't not necessarily want to go with a large company being a first time writer.
Okay.
And because, I heard that you could kind of get lost,
Okay. Uh-huh.
and I wanted someone to hold my hand because this is the first
Uh-huh.
time I'm going through this, and
Sure.
through each
Sure.
process.
Okay.
So that's why I went with this one particular small publishing company, and signed the contract in October. Had my mammogram in December.
Mm.
Got a call in
Mm.
December
Mm.
from the breast center,
Mm.
and they said, Lorraine Smith, you have breast cancer. And
Mm.
I'm like, okay, what
Wow.
happens now? I have a
Yeah.
son to live for. Whatever we have to do to make this happen, let's make it happen. Yeah, because I want to be
Okay.
here. So they
Okay.
said, first thing we're gonna have to do, surgery. Then, I, had dealt with my
Mm.
oncologist. We had a whole team,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
surgery, chemo, radiation, and that
Wow.
whole the whole process.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay. Uh, so I, spoke with my publishing company, which they were absolutely amazing. They were very patient. They were very
Okay.
understanding.
Mm-hmm.
They said, you take care of you first, and we'll just go by on how you feel. We'll follow your lead,
Sure. Sure.
basically. And
Sure.
they did. They were amazing, and there were days that I felt okay. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was editing the book with them, having conversations with them while I was, going through chemo and
Yeah.
radiation and that sort of thing. And
Uh-huh.
um, then, the book was delayed as far as being dates that we planned for publishing, but
Sure.
it was published. And I successfully, I'm a cancer survivor now. Everything was clean and clear. And, I,
Wow.
so I just, it wasn't like Disney World going
Yeah.
through and dealing
Uh-huh.
with this whole situation, but
Uh-huh.
I knew I wanted to publish this book. I want this book out there because
Okay.
still searching. It's a coming of age book, and it's about a young girl's journey. She's
Yeah.
from the South. Her journey with relationships, with college, with life, career
Yes.
choices,
Yeah.
relationships, divorce, death, just
Oh
the whole.
yeah. Oh
And,
yeah.
and after publishing the book, the responses that I received was so many people was like, they were that main character. It's so relatable. They can
Mm-hmm.
relate to
Mm-hmm.
her. So,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just a wonderful, the story wasn't so good getting there, but I persevered until I got on
Sure
the
you
other
did.
end.
Sure you did. Lorraine, how did you get it out there? How did people, when I read a little of it, and although it was fiction, I felt that's her story, really. At first I'm like, well, did she change the names? I really said, I'm like, I wonder, is that really her, that girl? And as
Well,
as
I
I
can relate
was,
to her. I can definitely relate to her.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I thought then. But initially, I'm like, that's a pen name, even though you said it was fiction. But based on what you said, we all have gone through those experiences. Maybe not the way you did, but we've
Yeah.
all been there. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay. 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 Why did you choose to go uh rather than self-publish? You
Hmm.
went and looked for a publisher. What
Hmm.
what was that? What were your thoughts in regards to that? Why did you go that route?
Um, I just threw it out there.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you hear uh, you know, the, the major publishing companies and that sort of thing, and you
Sure.
know, at hindsight 2020, I may have gone with a
Okay.
self-publishing
Okay.
situation, but it was
Hmm.
just all I knew at the time.
Okay. Okay.
So,
All
and,
right.
they, and it was a small publishing company that
Mm-hmm.
really,
Okay.
held my hand and,
Sure.
really,
Sure.
good
Okay.
to
And
me.
I, yeah, and I asked that question because I have a lot of listeners that want to write a book,
Hmm.
so, they wanted to hear your story more
Hmm.
and why did you go that way? And,
Yeah.
and I don't want them to think, well, she is a writer, so she probably knew people,
No.
right, exactly. And also you grew up writing,
Yeah. Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And storytelling was your thing. Also, I want to know, okay, you said people that read it. How did you market the book when you said people read it could relate? How was that?
This wonderful box that we're talking through, the internet.
Uh-huh. Okay. All
um,
right.
as well as, my publishing company had a wonderful marketing, and PR
Sure.
department.
Yeah.
But, word of mouth, friends, I started out with my friends.
Uh-huh.
Um, and because the publishing company gives you X amount of books for, free,
That's right.
so,
Mhm.
I would give them, the books, and, they would read them, and
Mhm.
they loved them. They loved the book, and they would tell a few friends, and then next thing I knew, I had
Okay.
a book signing, a book club. I was being invited to
Right.
various book clubs, and that's so
Okay.
that's how it started. It's, your friends and the internet, and
Okay.
so that's basically how it kind of like mushroomed.
Okay. Okay. Now tell us the story of how the book is a reflection of every woman who's ever questioned where she belongs. How is that?
Well, growing up, Brenda, who is the main character, she is one of six siblings, and she was like the middle child.
Okay.
And, the older brother, he could do no wrong. The younger
Uh-huh.
ones, they could do no wrong. But it seemed like,
Hmm.
Brenda, she
Hmm.
would get blamed for the younger kids, siblings, and it's
Hmm.
not her fault, but, you're the oldest, you should know better kind of thing. And she
Hmm.
just didn't know where she fit. It was like, basically, why am I here? I mean,
Right.
because, she, you know, on this side she was wrong, and that side she was wrong, and she could,
Right.
the more she tried to please her
Uh-huh.
mother, it was never enough.
Okay.
So, and her brother went to a particular, in the book, it's based in the South, and the South is very traditional during this period. And, you would, go to the same school, get married, that sort of
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
Become a teacher, or, whatever. And
Right.
I, Brenda did not particularly wanted to attend the same school that her brother did. She wanted to, to step out and be her own
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
path, you know, make her own path.
Right.
And,
Uh-huh.
so, that's basically what she did. She wanted to find out who she was, and
Okay.
she knew she could not do it being attending the same school that her brother did, marrying, the neighbor boy that her mother
Hmm.
wanted her to marry,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
sort of thing. So she wanted to,
Hmm.
step out, and she said there's more to life
Okay.
than this. So
Okay.
she had the chutzpah to go out and explore, whether
Uh-huh.
hell or high water, whatever happened, it was her choice.
Right.
And
Right.
Brenda, she had some. It's a roller coaster ride. She had some
Okay.
good times and not so good times,
Okay.
but it was a life lesson. And
Mhm.
and at the end of the day, in the book, even though her mother was kind of hard on her and that sort of thing, but after Brenda was married and had children, she kind of understood why her mom did what she did, as
Mhm.
far as raising her is concerned.
Yeah.
But, that's, basically the Brenda story, the trials and tribulations of life, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right.
She wanted to pursue it on her own, and on her, on her own conditions. And not because
Uh-huh.
someone told her to go to this school, someone told her to take this job, someone told her to do this. She
Right.
wanted to do her own, and,
Okay.
whether good, bad, or indifferent, that was her choice.
Okay. Okay. So, what was the end like? I mean, so what you indicated is she learned a lot of things
Hmm.
just based on her self-discovery journey, so to speak. How did her story end?
Well, it's still going on. It's an ongoing situation, but
Okay, okay,
but
okay.
she loved and lost, and she realized that life is it's a journey. It's,
Mhm,
there's no particular,
mhm,
it's the ending when it ends as far as
mhm,
life is
mhm,
concerned.
mhm.
But she understood how her how people why and how people made various choices in life.
Mhm. Okay.
And that's basically how it ended.
Okay.
She
Okay.
realized, that everyone's choice is their own choice. It's
Yeah.
their truth, not
Yes.
necessarily it's right or wrong, but it's just, their path in life.
Right. Excellent. Okay. So in other words, she went on a self-discovery journey.
Exactly.
And yeah, and,
Exactly.
and that was good. And then from that, she figured out where she belonged.
Hmm.
She
Hmm.
belonged what she was currently doing, and
Exactly.
right. And as she moved forward, and when we talk about when individuals read your book, their stories, we all have a story,
Hmm.
you know. And many like hers, and a lot of us do things that our parents want us to do or our friends. We want permission, then we start comparing. And so I can see why that book, and you called it, what we call it, the meaning, the searching.
It's still
She's
searching.
searching.
Hmm.
That's right.
Hmm.
And she's still searching.
And
She's
that's
at
life.
the end. Exactly.
We're always
Exactly.
searching for something. The more we want, sometimes the more we want, more we want.
That's
It's like
correct. That's
we're
correct.
never satisfied, and sometimes God is like, "This is it, honey." Yeah,
Right.
you're
Right.
here. But
Right.
we keep wanting more, and it's like, no, you're good right
Right.
here. This is it.
Right. Right.
And then when we
And
go for the more, then something, you know, the the bottom opens, and we kind of like fall through. It's like,
Mhm,
okay, I should have listened.
mhm, mhm. But one thing about Brenda, she was adventurous. She
Yes.
went
Hmm.
against the status quo.
Yeah.
And if
Exactly.
she had not, what would her lesson learned be? So she learned so much,
Hmm.
so she went out on the limb.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that I wanted to talk about that so my listeners, number one, not only get the book, but understand that you're still searching and you're going
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
search till the end. And one of the
Exactly.
things I shared with my listeners is what triggered my book. And it was all about this woman who was a hospice nurse by the name of
Mm.
Bonnie Ware. And Bonnie interviewed individuals transitioning, and
Uh,
she created a book from it, but there were just five common themes, and two of them really bothered me. Three of the I shouldn't have worked so hard. I should have visited more friends and family. I should have traveled. But the two was, I wish I'd have been more true to myself, and
mm.
I wish I could have been happier. And when I saw that, I'm like, dang, am I true to myself? Am I ever happy?
Mhm.
And but I translate happy to joy because I want to have joy. That,
Yeah.
because to me, happy is a happening. That's just my thing.
Mhm.
And I was like,
Joy
wow,
is, yeah.
yeah. And I'm
Mm.
like, what? I mean, why couldn't they be true to themselves? Why
Mhm.
can't they be happy? So I'm like, okay, let's all do some soul searching, like your book. Let's
Mhm.
search and
Mhm.
see what that thing is all about. And one of the things that I say is, I don't want any of my clients, my listeners, to die with regrets.
Right.
Like she
And Brenda
says,
didn't have any regrets either. Brenda
yeah,
did not want any regrets. Say, I wish I coulda, shoulda. She did not want
exactly.
that. Mhm.
Exactly. And the coulda, shoulda is judgment. You're judging
Yeah.
when you say, I
Right.
should have, I
Mhm.
could have, so I'm like, don't should on me.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Don't do that to me.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So when you receive your award, well, let me I want to go back to something. Remember you talked about when your mom said, you'll be back. Oh,
Mhm.
you'll be
Mhm.
back.
Yeah.
And just her saying that was like, you became defiant. I am not. I'm going.
Prove to you and
That's
everyone
right.
else. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. kind of like when I was working and I had a boss. I got a new job, and the boss said, "Hey, many of your colleagues don't think you're fit for this job." And I'm like, "Really?" Like, they're saying you're embarrassed, and then I'm like, "Really?" And I was hurt. I was hurt, and I asked him, "Could I go home?" And he said, "You may want to think about getting back in the industry that you were in." So I went home and cried, and called my parents, and had a talk. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm not leaving. I'm not going back to another job. I'm going to prove to them, So that's why you were like, you know what? I'm going to prove to those 60 rejections. I'm going to
Yep.
get up. I'm going to do what it is that
Yep.
I'm feeling led to do.
Mhm.
As a result of it, how did you feel when, okay, you've accomplished the journalism, that's, the broadcasting, that's what you wanted to do. Now the book. How is Lorraine Smith feeling about now? What's happening with you?
Overjoyed,
Mm-hmm.
surreal, because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think this little baby
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to take me as far as it's taken me and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
So I am overjoyed. I am blessed. I am grateful. Uh, it's just been a blessing, a huge blessing. That's how
Mm-hmm.
I feel. I
Mm-hmm.
feel grateful, full of
Mm-hmm.
gratitude.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that, because that's what I want my listeners to start feeling. For those who are not living their best life on their terms, and for
Mhm.
those who don't even know what best life looks like, it's time for them to reflect in retrospect. What would that look like, so they can feel overjoyed? Now, one of
It's
the things.
scary.
Oh yeah.
It's
Oh,
scary.
absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely. Yeah, but like you said, still searching, right?
you know.
You're still searching. So what's next for you, Lorraine? What's
Well,
next?
I'm working on another book. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be based here in Boston, Cambridge area. Two girlfriends, again, because Brenda in
Okay.
the book, she has a girlfriend that from college who is her lifelong girlfriend. And, she, you know, tells it like it is. But in the next book,
Mm-hmm.
it's two girlfriends here in the Boston, Cambridge area. And they met at work, and it's kind of like, they both have kids, and, one's divorced and one's not. And,
Mm-hmm.
just, life, and
Mm-hmm.
how these are older
Mm-hmm.
women. So, I'm trying to get that aspect, because Brenda, she's like in her, we started out when she was a teenager, and then we went through her 20s and her
Okay.
30s, and this is the 40s.
Okay.
But this particular book, it's, much older. They're in their 50s, and, they're on the other side. And, how do we maneuver that, the
Yeah.
empty nesters, and,
Yeah.
divorce, and
Oh,
that whole aspect of life.
okay. Is
You
this
know.
a sequel? What do
No,
you think?
no,
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 no.
not really. No.
Okay. That's interesting. That's I
Yeah.
like that. I like that. Um, I want to talk. One other thing I want to talk about is, let's talk about the pauses,
Mm.
because we've titled this podcast, "A Pause is Not a Period." And as you talk about it, I want you to kind of talk to the listeners that are stuck.
Okay.
There's different things they want to do. So what does that pause is not a period thing
Well, the
about?
pause for me, my pause was having my son and not necessarily pursuing my writing career.
Okay.
And it was something, I think the divine order
Mm-hmm.
made me pause,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I wanted this book to be published, many moons ago. But,
Right. Right.
like I said, I had a breakup, I have a son,
Mm-hmm.
I was working at a television station, which was very demanding at the time. And,
Mm-hmm.
God was like, you have enough on your plate, and
Mm-hmm.
I have a plan for you. We're going to put this on pause right now. So I just, I said, okay. And
Mm-hmm.
went on with my life, raised my wonderful son. And, he's now, went through college, undergrad, well, high school, undergrad, grad school. I worked two jobs, just to make
Wow.
sure he,
Yeah.
I was working two jobs when I was going through, chemo and radiation,
Yeah. Wow.
because he was,
Sure.
I just, it's like you have to do what you have to do. You persevere, you know.
Yes. Yes.
And I want my son to have a better chance, and, to have more and better choices than I
Mm-hmm.
did. And with,
Mm-hmm.
the education, he would have, the chance
Sure.
to do that. So,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
made sacrifices. This is
Sure.
another thing. You will make sacrifices. And I made a lot of sacrifices,
Mm-hmm.
for him
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to, and I don't regret it because I would
Sure.
do it again.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
that was my pause. My pause was to concentrate on my son and for
Okay.
him to be the best young man that he could be. So now that he's, finished with all his education, he has a wonderful job. He recently got married last year to a wonderful young lady.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was my time. Before it
Yes.
wasn't my time, it was his time. So that was
Yeah.
my pause to
Yes.
concentrate on him. And
Yeah.
now it's my time. I'm an empty nester now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
like I'm 65 and
Mm-hmm.
it's, my book is published and, things are wonderful. If this would have happened back then, I don't think it would have been as sweet as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's just so sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
wonderful. And
Yeah.
things are just happening. It's like, seems like every day there's a blessing because of,
Right.
still searching. And I don't necessarily know if this would have happened,
Right.
10
Right.
plus years ago. So
Well, Lorraine Smith, you have done well.
thank you.
Congratulations. And I know that this is not the end.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
I,
And yeah, go ahead.
I just want to leave saying to the listeners, never give up,
Mm-hmm.
persevere. It's not
Mm-hmm.
going to be easy. Anything easy, I find, is not worthwhile.
Right. That's
There's,
right.
it's so just never give up. If you have a dream, a passion,
Yes.
follow it to the end because
Yes. Thank you.
there's a rainbow at the end, like in
Yeah.
the Oz. There's a
Yeah.
rainbow there and at the end of
Absolutely.
Oz. So
Yeah.
it's not easy, it's tough, and
Mm-hmm.
but it's worth it. If
Mm-hmm.
it's what you truly want to do and it's your passion, go
Mm-hmm.
for it.
Yeah, great. Now tell my listeners how they can get your book.
Um, you can it's on Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
all the platforms online, and starting next month,
Mm-hmm.
it will be in the Barnes and Nobles. It will be in all of the majority of the retail stores, the Targets, the
Awesome. That's
the
awesome.
Costco's,
Yeah. All
and
right.
also in the libraries. And
Okay.
you could reach me on at Lorraine Ophelia Smith on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on Facebook, Lorraine Smith. Um, X, same thing,
Okay.
Lorraine Ophelia Smith.
Sure.
So so I'm all over the place.
That's awesome. And you know what? If you would have self-published it, it would not have been all over the place. So
Yeah,
because you
yeah,
use the traditional publisher, that's why, because what happens is if they don't sell all the books,
mhm,
they want you to take them back.
yeah.
You wouldn't be able to take them back. So everything that you did was not only purposeful, but I think it was ordained.
Uh,
And
Thank
yeah,
you. Yeah.
and I just want to thank you for being my guest today. You were wonderful, and you are the epitome, proof that it is never too late to step into your best life.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. I want to
yeah.
thank you so much, Cassandra, because I've been looking forward to this interview for like weeks. I'm like, I'm going to be on Cassandra's
Oh,
podcast.
wow. Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And listeners, I know that this has blessed you. And I ask that you share this. And also, you can listen to it over and over and over again. And please show the front of your book one more time. I love your cover. Still
Thank you,
searching.
thank you. Still
Yeah, covers
searching.
are very important.
Yep.
So there's her book, ladies, or Jenny Gents that are on the podcast, listening to the podcast. So again, Lorraine, thank you. And one of the things I always say to my listeners, I'll say, God bless you.
Thank
I'll
you.
say bye for now. And Lorraine, you and I are going to stay in touch.
Yes, I'm coming to Silver Springs and we're going to do lunch.
Okay, good, good. God bless you and bye for now.
God bless you. And thank you so much for having me. I truly, truly enjoyed speaking with
You are,
you and your listeners.
thank you. You are so welcome.
God bless.